So this is the agenda that we're working with today. It's first we're going to talk a little bit about what OPT is, if you're eligible for it, when you can apply, what materials you need to apply. Can I travel on OPT, which I did not remember to add into the slide, but we'll talk briefly about that. Basically, if you're waiting for your card, you want to avoid that if you can. But we can talk about that, in person if there's a particular issue that you have about that. And then questions you are free to ask then. So basically, what OPT is, optional practical training is defined in the regulations as temporary employment for practical training directly related to the student's major of study. So you may be familiar with practical training in the form of CPT, which is the curricular practical training. Some of you have already participated in that. That is a little different from OPT in the sense that it still does have to be related to your major, but a CPT is an internship or something that I can approve myself, that you just come to me, there's some steps that you have to complete, but as long as you're able to register for an internship class and it matches your degree, then in most cases I can approve that without any problem. OPT is actually something that I do not approve myself. I'll talk about that in a minute. Now there are two types of OPT. There's pre-completion OPT and then there's post-completion OPT. Basically what that means is the OPT that you can do while you're enrolled here during the 4 years, and post-completion means after you've graduated. Now, although pre-completion OPT is an option for students, it's a pretty rare kind of thing that you'd want to get involved in, mostly just because it takes so long for USCIS to approve it. And in most cases, a CPT, approval would work for you anyway. But it may be in your particular case that would be something you want to talk about with me, and we can talk about it, no problem. But you should know that both full-time CPT and pre-completion OPT is counted in your allowable hours of OPT. Okay, and you are allowed, unless you're a STEM major, you are allowed 12 months of OPT during each level of study. So if you wanted to get OPT for your undergrad, that's one level of study. Let's say you go to grad school, then you could get OPT again for graduate work, okay? Part-time CPT doesn't count into that total, but full-time would, okay? Now, post-completion OPT is what most people refer to when they say they want to do OPT. They mean, oh, after I graduate, I want to stay in the country and work. Now, you do have an extension if you are a STEM. I see a couple STEM majors on the call here. You do have the extension possibility for after you've completed your, well, you have to apply before the end of your 1-year OPT, but you have the option of extending for up to 2 years as a STEM OPT person. But basically, this OPT is available for F1 students who can apply after they've completed the program of study. This is the most common of OPT that you hear people talk about, and the applications are adjudicated by USCIS, okay? Now, are you eligible for this? Basically, most of you should be. So you are an F1 student in legal status. You've maintained your status here while you've been at Roanoke College. There hasn't been any situation where you've had your status revoked or anything like that. You've been lawfully enrolled full-time here for at least 1 academic year. This was the part that I was concerned about for us with the regulations that first came out in July about this fall, because there were several people that would be graduating this year, next year, and that may knock out their option for OPT because you have to be enrolled at least 1 year prior to applying for OPT, okay? And then you need to have a valid passport for up to 6 months into the future, and you have to have an unexpired I-20. All of you should have that. If it were expired, we'd have some other issues. But We just have to make sure that your I-20 is not expired, and this is why I do the registration every semester. Is I'm checking in to make sure that are you still on track for graduation? Do I need to extend your date, or are we working with the right date? So as long as you don't have an expired I-20, that's good. And then if you have not used more than 364 days of full-time CPT during your degree. Okay. And are you in the last semester of your study? So some of you here on this call are not graduating this semester or even next semester, but it's good to have an overview of this process and know what kind of options you have. If you are graduating at the end of this semester, then we need to get on applying very soon. Okay. So who processes this? So of course I play a role. I have to approve, basically recommend you to do OPT. I do that after talking with you and getting the application materials, which we'll talk about in a minute. But then once I submit the recommendation, it's not over like CPT would be. You have to submit the application materials to USCIS. So there'll be a whole packet that you're going to mail off to them. Okay, and I will have no control over the decision process. Although I will say that traditionally we have not had any problems with getting OPT for students as far as getting them approved. Timing could be an issue because there are certain rules, which we can talk about in a little bit, about how long you can be unemployed and how long you can stay in the country without a status, things like that. But usually getting approved is not the issue, okay? But I have no control over it. So if they say no, then that could be problematic. Although you may receive notice that they may deny you or they intend to deny you, and it's just because they're waiting for other pieces of evidence. Maybe there was an incomplete application, or maybe your name straight over the line in one of the boxes. They can be rather picky about things, but we can fix those kinds of things before they actually say no. So when can you apply? This is kind of the key question that people ask. You are eligible to apply starting 90 days before you graduate. So if you were graduating in December, which the college, even though our semester is over November 24th, the college has decided to keep that date as December 15th on your OPT, on your I-20s. So that would mean that you could start applying on the 16th of this month if you wanted to do that. If you're graduating in the spring, then you could start your application as early, or submit your application as early as the 4th of February of next year. But you cannot apply earlier than 90 days, and you can apply up to 60 days after you graduate. So when I say that you can apply, it has to be in their greedy little hands within that 60 days. And that's, we'll talk a little bit processing time in a minute. But so really the sweet spot is to try to figure out what are you going to strategize? What date are you going to pick? Should you pick the date really, really early, or should you pick a later date? So I do have some tools that I'll be putting on the site, but in the meantime, I can send you through email. It's like an Excel spreadsheet that kind of lays out some of the dates for you to help you figure out which is the best date to apply. Some things to consider are that you are not allowed to begin work until you get your EAD. So the result of this whole process for you to go through OPT is to receive this little card that's called an EAD, and that's your work authorization. You cannot start work without that little card, okay? So the processing times for USCIS ranges from 90 days to I've just forgotten, that's in the slide later on. It's usually 3 to 5 months, basically. They were planning on laying off people at USCIS, which was a real issue with this, but they've decided to hold off on that. So I'm assuming they're still going to be in that window of 3 to 5 months. And there is a way that we can check that online to see what they are advertising their processing times. So if you have a job already lined up, you know someone that you can work for, you've already had conversations about that. You don't have to have that to apply, by the way. You don't already have to have a job. But if you do have that, then I would say you want to apply as early as you can, because you don't want to be sitting around waiting to work when you can, right? Now, if you have no job and or no ideas for a job per se, and the market looks bad, maybe you don't want to apply at the very beginning of your eligibility, because that may mean that you could run out of your unemployment days. Okay, you only have 90 days that you can be in this country approved on OPT and not work. So those days can add up quickly. But again, we can talk about that in person in your personal cases to figure out which one makes the most sense for you. So here's just a sample OPT timeline, right? You've got your 90 days before or up to 60 days after graduation. You're going to send in your application with all the required documents. The processing times vary. I have no control over that, but 3 to 5 months is usually the time period, okay? You receive your EAD card and begin working, and this is your year-long time period that you have to work here in the States. Now, you will only be able to work on the dates that are specified on your EAD. So you're requesting a date for when you want to start work, but the actual date they give you is the day you can start work. So let's say you thought, oh, I can start work on February the 15th, but you don't receive your card and get approval until March the 1st. So you'll be working from March the 1st, okay? And then usually that length of time is like say February 28th, maybe the last working day that you have to encapsulate that 12 months. Now, if you're STEM eligible, you can see that 90 days before the end of your OPT, then you can apply for a STEM extension. And because you're already on OPT and you're just waiting for the STEM extension, you are still allowed to continue working until your card comes in. And at the end of OPT, you have 60 days that you have to figure out what you're going to do. That could mean that the company you're working for wants to sponsor you to be an H-1B visa holder, in which case there's like a cap gap extension that you can apply for. Or it could be that you've decided you want to go to grad school and you have 60 days to sort of wrap up your OPT and get your record transferred to the new school, which would be me. I would transfer it for you, but I'd have to have the letter of acceptance that you were able to do that. Or you go home. Maybe you accomplish your goal. You're here, you've completed your degree, and you want to have experience, work experience here in the US, and now you're ready to go home. Those are sort of the options that you have after that. So the first thing you do, you've already done it. It's exciting. You've reviewed, or you are reviewing, you're attending the OPT workshop. That's what we're doing right now. Good job for you. Second step is I have an OPT request form, which I will send to y'all. And basically, this is giving me the information that I need for what your thoughts are about OPT, right? Basic information. You know, this will snag me. I already know those of you that have STEM degrees, but it also just helps me, you know, remember that I can help you with a STEM extension as we move along. And then we have a little checklist of required documents of what you need to complete. So you'll see this workshop, or eventually I may make a quiz for people to make sure that they at least see the beginnings of this. And then a verification of completion form. That's what I'm calling basically your graduation review. And you can get that from Leah Russell in the registrar's office. I also have a form that I've created called the verification of completion form that she can fill out. Either one will work for my purposes. I just want to make sure that she's cast her eyes upon your courses and has approved that, yes, at the end of this particular semester, you will have graduated, okay? And then all of your I-20s that you've had, So if you've been here in the US for a while, you'll need to have copies of those. And then your most recent I-94, which we can get online if you don't have. And if you have been approved with an EAD card previously, maybe you've been transferred from another school and you already had a pre-completion OPT or some other thing that you had that gave you an EAD card, I'd need a copy of that. And then of course you would just sign. And then the next step is you're going to gather all the documents together that you would need to submit to USCIS. Of course, you're not going to do that yet, but you're going to gather them together. Okay, so you can see we've got passport style photos. They cannot be more than 30 days old. You can go to UPS, Allen Post Office, CVS, other places you can get those done. The USCIS fee. Now they will charge you, as you know, for a lot of things. And right now the fee is $410, but for most of you that fee will actually be $550 because it will go up as of October the 2nd. And that's, I think SNGDA figured that out, as like a 34% increase. So it's not a small chunk of change. So $550. Now, this may help you decide if you want to apply for OPT in the first place, right? Like, do you feel like this would be worthwhile to you and what you would get out of the experience? You know, certainly you're welcome to think about that first, right? And then there's a form, G1145, that is a notification form to let you know that they received it. And then the I-765 is the big form that you have to submit with all of your application materials. And it can be a little tricky, so I have like some tips set aside for you for how to fill those out correctly, and we can go over that when we meet. A copy of your OPT I-20, now that would be what I create, because I have to recommend you and create that, and we attach that to the form, so you can't gather that yet, but I'll have that. And then, like I said, all previously issued I-20s, passport identification page, your visa copy, I-94, and the other cards that I mentioned. Some of that stuff I'll have here that we can get together here in the office, and other things you'll need to bring with you. Okay, so then you're going to meet with me to, did you notice all these acronyms? We've got PDSO, Primary Designated School Official. RIO is the new thing that we're calling our office, Roanoke International Office, to review OPT advising requirements and go through the required documents. You can do that through, I have a Meet With Me link in my signature line. You're welcome to do that, or you can just email me and we can set up a time. And I will update I-20 and CVIS and print out a new I-20 for you, and a recommendation, and there's a cover letter that goes with that. And I will put that all together for you. Now, we might be able to do this all in one meeting. It may be that we meet, review everything, you bring me what you have, I put things together, and you come back and pick it up. It just may depend on what's going on at the time period, at the time, but we'll get that together. And then you are responsible for mailing your package. I would use FedEx or DHL to USCIS Processing Center for our area, and I have that address, of course. And then you wait. See my little guy here? He feels a little lonely and sad. That may happen to you, I will be honest, as you wait for your life to begin. But you will also be looking for a job, so you'll be pretty busy. And maybe graduating too, so, you know. So keep in mind that the processing times are basically 90 to 150 calendar days from the date in which they receive everything. So this broad overview here is we've got submit OPT application to RIO for review. I say allow a week processing. I don't expect it to really take that long, but it may depend on what's going on, right? Schedule an appointment with me, mail off your stuff. You're going to receive the notice, and the I-797 receipt notice is one that you get mailed, but that other form I mentioned, the 1145, is one I think that you can get a text. So maybe you want both, I don't know. And then you receive your card, and that's when you know you can start work. And of course, you're going to be sending me a copy front and back of that card once you receive it. All right, So I know I've just talked totally for 25 minutes. What questions do you have that I can answer for you?
My question is that speaking of housing during the internship, are we supposed to provide our own housing, or can we just stay at school and do the work?
It's a good
Yeah, how does
question.
that?
So once you're graduated, you actually can't even work on campus anymore. So your program date, unless you're working here, unless you're getting hired here for your OPT, like Janny did, right? She got hired here for her OPT so she could continue working here. Otherwise, you cannot work after your program end date. That also means you can't stay on campus. You would be providing your own housing, everything, basically. What your goal is to find a decent paying job that will provide those things for you. Now, most jobs also, this is a good point to bring up, most jobs do provide insurance, but I have amended our policy here that you have, the insurance that you've had all of your years here, that allows you to continue on that as an OPT student. It is more expensive. So that is something that you would have to think about. It would still probably be cheaper than having to provide your own in some marketplace out there, but that is an option for you if you're having a hard time finding a job and you don't want your coverage to lapse.
Yeah, I see. And speaking of the cost, or like the application fee, I guess, you said it's gonna like go up after the 2nd of October.
Yes, ma'am.
If we apply before then, how much would we have to pay?
Well, you can't apply before your last semester of study.
We can't apply what?
You
Sorry.
can't apply before you're actually able to graduate.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah. So I have two students that are actually graduating this semester, and those two students who are not on this call right now, but if they were and they wanted to go ahead and start their OPT application, if they got it in to them before October the 2nd, then they would be able to pay the $410. If they didn't apply then everybody else is going to have to pay the $550 going up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So do you understand what OPT is? Yeah. Okay. The first step after this is to do what?
To get the application from you?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So I will send out this request form to you all, and you can start that. If you're having problems with filling that out or you need questions, of course, you can contact me. You can also, in the meantime, as you're waiting for that, if you want to go ahead and schedule a time with me, I have a link on the web page where you can get me, or you just send me an email, and when I reply to you, you can just click on that button to pick one of those times that I have available. Now, those times are kind of just free times. That doesn't mean that's the only time I have available. So if those times don't really work for you, just let me know.
Quick question. Did you say we use BookMe? What do we use to sign up for a meeting time?
I use Appointlet, and I have that on the web page, but I also have it in my email signature line. So I'll send this out today, this request form, to everyone that attended, even if you can't use it right now, just so you can have it. And you can just respond to that and click on that button to book a time.
Okay, sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, was this helpful at all? Okay.
Yes.
Good, I hope so. I hope at least give you an overview. Now, the goal here is that we're going to put this online on our website and have all the materials there so that you can look at it at your leisure when you need to be reminded or whatever. It's not hidden information. It's information that should be available to you. You also have a resource called Study in the States, which if you haven't been to that, you should check that out, because that is sort of I guess a hub for all sorts of stakeholders, right? So students, DSOs, in the government, they give out information about the options that you have. And you're always welcome to look and read those things. And if you see something that you're like, wait a minute, Carmen, I think she said this, but I see on this that it says this thing. Totally don't feel weird about saying, Carmen, I saw this and I thought this worked What does that mean? Because there are some subtle differences in things that could depend on your status. It could depend on policies from our school that maybe is not listed on that website. So any questions you have, just please feel free to ask. Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and end this call then, and please feel free to follow up with me with other questions that you may have about this, and I'll send out the request forms, and then we'll start meeting and planning.